Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com. Welcome to the podcast. This is your co-host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be with Sam Goodner, a serial entrepreneur, angel investor, and mentor with a passion for solving business problems through the innovative use of technology. He is an Inc. 500 CEO and an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He is also the author of the book, Like Clockwork, Run Your Business with Swiss Army Precision. Sam, thank you so much for joining us.
Seth, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started?
For this one, I actually have to go all the way back to where I grew up. I was born to American parents, but I grew up in Switzerland, this beautiful little country nested in the Alps. We became Swiss. In Switzerland, we have compulsory military service. So after high school, I served in the Swiss Army, came to the US to go to college, and didn't start my first company until I was 26. This is in the early 90s. The reason I mention this is I didn't know this in the beginning, but I started noticing as I founded one company after the next over the following 30 years that I was even unknowingly applying many of the principles that I had learned serving as an officer in the Swiss Army to the different companies I was running. And so 30 years later, I finally decided to sort of give back to the entrepreneurial world that had given me so much. And I wrote that book that you mentioned, Like Clockwork. And so it's a book on operational scalability where I talk about principles I learned, again, as an officer in the Swiss Army, and then later applied in the various companies I ran over the following 30 years.
Well, I know the longer version of that story is in the book, which we will highly recommend everyone go get, and we'll tell them where to get it in just a minute later on. What are some of the biggest problems you see that business owners are facing?
So, especially now in my business coaching practice, what I often see is that companies hit a wall. They hit a scalability wall. They grow, they're a successful startup, they're solving a real problem, they get traction, and then suddenly they hit a plateau. And one of the major reasons for when companies hit that plateau is that the founder has often become the bottleneck, because in the beginning, they're used to, because they have to, be in the middle of every single decision. But as the company grows and the founder starts hiring, people to run various parts of the business, if they still get pulled in either deliberately or even accidentally into all the major decisions, you can't scale beyond a certain size. So number one is the acknowledging that the entrepreneur, the founder, is the bottleneck. And then how do you get past that? How do you operationalize your business in a way that it can truly scale beyond you being the superhero in the middle of every single decision?
That makes a lot of sense. And then obviously we want people to read the book, but what were some of the Swiss Army lessons that help us solve that problem?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that there are many valuable principles that business leaders can learn from the military, any military, by the way. Mine happens just to be the Swiss Army, but I think you can learn these same principles from any military system. And there are leadership principles, the value of preparation and training, decision-making, gathering intelligence. But if I had to just boil it down to in my opinion, the most important one, it would be the principle of clarity. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in the military context, it's obvious, right? Everybody knows clearly who's in command. We clearly understand the mission. We understand what my role is in the mission. We understand how to measure success in that operation. Every communication has to be completely clear and concise, unambiguous. Otherwise, mistakes happen and people die. Right? In business, if a company can achieve the same level of clarity where everybody understands their swim lanes, we all understand what direction we're going into, who our customer is, what kind of business we're going after, who's responsible for what, then that business can scale all the way down to every single communication in a business. So if you have a meeting in a business context and you leave that meeting and it's not completely clear what was discussed, what the decisions were that we made, and who is then responsible for what, who's going to do what after that meeting, then that was a wasted meeting. So the principle of clarity is probably the most important principle that you can take from the military context.
That makes a lot of sense. You talk about turning complexity into simplicity as being crucial for operational effectiveness. What advice can you offer us as leaders trying to simplify our business?
This is what I call operational scalability. For me, the formula is pretty simple. It's what I just mentioned. It's clarity plus repeatability plus time. So clarity is everything I just talked about. If you clearly understand what you believe in, who you are, where you're going as a company, who your core customer is, what our customers can expect from us, how we're different than everybody else in the industry, who's accountable for what everybody's swim lane is. And if on top of that, if you really understand the key metrics that drive your business, then you're ready to start scaling. You do that by implementing repeatability. If you implement repeatability before you have clarity on all those things, you're going to just scale chaos. And so repeatability, this is where if you want to be able to scale something, you have to go codify your best practices. Let me take sales as an example. It's usually where I like to start anyway. I mentioned earlier, one of the bottlenecks of the business is often the founder. And always the founder is usually the first salesperson in any business, which is normal. And then they get to the point where like, well, I can't, I'm too busy. I need to go hire salespeople. And then their gut instinct is, well, if I just go hire an experienced salesperson and throw them at the problem, that's going to solve my problem. And that never solves the problem, because that new salesperson, or God forbid you go hire a whole sales team, they don't know what to sell yet or who to sell to. So before you can go hire another salesperson, you as the founder who's been the main salesperson of your company, you have to go literally write down in a sales playbook all the things that you've learned about selling your product or service. Who is the buyer? Not just the industry, not just the size of the company, not just the geographical location, but who inside that company is your buyer? How do you get in front of them? What works? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Do you have to wait for them in the lobby of their building? What objections are you going to hear over and over again? How do you overcome those objections? What does a proposal look like? Et cetera, et cetera. Only once you've done that and codified that in a sales playbook are you ready to go hire your first salesperson or sales team. And then you go apply that to literally every other part of your business, from recruiting to manufacturing to operations to accounting, every part of your business, until you can, unless you've codified what good looks like, what your best practices are in every part of your business, you're not truly ready to go hire more people to go do that for your company.
Wow. That is painful good advice. What leadership lessons have had the greatest impact on your career as an entrepreneur and business builder?
Yeah, one of the biggest lessons for me. In fact, I'll quote a very good friend of mine. Her name is Amy Jo Martin. One of my favorite quotes from her is, "We vote with our time for the life we want to live." Right? We vote with our time for the life we want to live. That applies both in our personal lives and in our business lives. So when I meet with a young entrepreneur and I'm mentoring them and they're telling me I'm working on this part of my business and I want to really, get better at, you pick any part of the business. I'm like, great, show me your calendar. Show me where on your calendar you're actually dedicating time to working on that specific part of your business. And like, well, It's when I go on my long walks in the evening, like that doesn't count. Like, like, by the way, in your personal life, it's the same, right? If somebody says, I want to be a great father, and I'm going to ask him, how much time are you spending with your family and with your kids? If you want to train for a triathlon, how many hours are you spending a week training for that triathlon? And so I know it sounds super simple, but where you spend your time is going to drive where you spend your focus and what you're going to get better at or drive results for any part of your business. So it starts simply with that. And when I want to hold myself accountable, I go study my calendar. I do it at the end of every week. I do it at the end of every quarter. I even do it once a year. I'll go week by week and look at where did I really spend my time this year, and was it where I wanted to spend my time, and do it. And I'll grade myself. Did I do a good job at it focusing on that? Even if I didn't, maybe I wanted to learn to play an instrument. Maybe I didn't master that instrument, but at least I practiced an hour a day, I know I'm going in the right direction.
That makes a lot of sense. In addition to the Swiss Army, obviously you've worked at a number of different companies and been a leader there. Can you talk about some of those experiences?
Well, the very first company I started was called Catapult Systems. The interesting part of that story was we it was an IT services company, an IT consulting firm. Over 20 years, we became the number one Microsoft systems integrator in the world before I sold that business to a public company in 2013. And we never set out to be an IT consulting firm. That wasn't our initial goal. That was almost by accident. Our goal at the time was to become a successful software product company, but we didn't have any capital. And this was the early 90s before three young, enterprising young men or entrepreneurs could go raise a bunch of money. So we thought to ourselves, well, we don't have enough capital to fund all these different product ideas we have, but we know a lot about building enterprise systems in this new environment, sort of a post-mainframe world. I bet companies would pay us to help them figure this out. And so we became a consulting firm by accident, solely as a means of generating cash flow to fund these different product ideas that we had, which we did actually. We developed several products along the years. PowerDoc, Advanced Power Tools, our flagship product Inquisit, which became its own successful company, which we sold 10 years later. But along the way, we had accidentally built this very successful consulting business. And that was right place, right time. Right after we started the company, suddenly we had the advent of the internet and the World Wide Web, and every company wanted to build applications on that platform. Then we had Y2K remediation. Then we had the mobile revolution. So we were sort of at the right place at the right time to build an IT services firm. But that was never our intent originally. So that's the story of Catapult Systems.
Well, that's one incredible journey. You've helped so many people and you've achieved so much success. What's the biggest challenge you're facing now?
Well, it's been really fun. I sort of look at my life. I'm now in the third chapter of my professional life. The first chapter is when I was founding my own companies. That was probably the first 20 years. And then I retired for the first time in 2013. I took the kids out of school. We traveled around the world as a family for 13 months, around 34 countries, homeschooling the kids. That was an amazing life adventure. Then when I came back, I knew I wasn't ready to retire yet, but I didn't want to start a company from scratch. And so I started looking for a company to buy or invest in that I could join full time and help scale. And after looking at 100 startups over the course of a year, I found this small technology company in of all things, the parking technology space. This was in 2016, called Flash Parking. And they needed, some growth capital and someone with some gray hair to help them sort of navigate the potholes of scaling a technology business. I could provide both. So I put myself on the team as president and I took down their whole round with a friend of mine. And we proceeded to scale that business to become the largest parking technology company in the world today. It got past a certain point. Once it got past 100 million, it didn't need me anymore. So I retired for the second time. And then to go write that book I was telling you about that I've been keeping notes on for the past 25 years. And so with the book, I sort of leveraged this into a business consulting practice now where I've scaled all the mountains I want to scale. And now I'm deriving all of my sort of joy and passion and energy from helping others scale their mountains by coaching them sort of to be better entrepreneurs, better leaders. And so that's both my biggest joy, my biggest pleasure, and my biggest challenge all at once, because obviously I'm used to running businesses. I'm used to being a player. I'm not used to being a coach. So I'm learning all about what it's like to be a business coach, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Well, congratulations on that and all the success and the book. Tell our folks watching or listening where they can go to get the book and learn more about all things Sam Goodner.
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon, like all books, of course, in both paper format, Kindle, audiobook. It's also an Amazon bestseller in the business category, so that was super fun. And if you want to find out more about me or my work or consulting or business coaching practice, you can simply go to samgoodner.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn, of course.
All right. This has been Seth Greene with Sam Goodner. Sam, thank you again for joining us.
Seth, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on. Thank you all for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.